Hello everyone, a very nice and warm welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Pratik and I'll be taking up the News Today discussion for 6th of August 2025. So before we start the discussion, let us first take a look at the main news. First news is India and Philippines have signed strategic partnership agreement. Second news, Russia officially exits from the INF Treaty of 1987. Third, Dharali of Uttarakhand hit by cloudburst triggered flash floods. Fourth, ISA or International Seabed Authority concluded 30th session. Fifth, WHO classifies hepatitis D as carcinogenic. And the last news, fair and representative global order, something that has been desirable or mentioned by the Ministry of External Affairs. And in the places of news, we'll be covering New Zealand. So let us start with the very first news, that is India-Philippines strategic partnership. Now, before we discuss this news, let us first understand the syllabus from where it can be mapped. So it is definitely from international relations, and from the international relations within, we can see that there are multiple topics which are part of IR. So it is part of Indian neighborhood relations first. And in neighborhood, we are not just considering the immediate neighborhood, but we are also considering the extended neighborhood as well, right? So here, this is Philippines is part of India's external neighborhood or extended neighborhood. Okay. Apart from this, Philippines is also, this agreement is essential because agreements or any bilateral ties is also part of our syllabus. So any major development that happens, we should also take a note of that. So what has happened really is that this is the 75th anniversary of India-Philippines relations. Okay, so the diplomatic relationship started way back in 1949. Okay, so this is the 75th anniversary. Okay, and because of that, the relationship has now been elevated to a strategic partnership. So here we'll discuss exactly about the nature of India-Philippines relationship and what exactly have happened along with this specific collaboration. There are certain other aspects in which also we are collaborating, especially when it comes to mutual legal assistance and also in terms of transfer of sentenced people. So those who will commit crime, for example, any citizen of India who commits crime in Philippines may be tried or can be sent back to Philippines for the rest of the period and vice versa. And then there are sectoral cooperation in science, in technology, in space, etc. So again, this is the major development that have happened, that India and Philippines have elevated their ties to strategic level. And we'll discuss what exactly it means. And then there are certain other agreements with regard to mutual legal assistance, and then in terms of some sectoral cooperation. Now, if we start with any bilateral relation, we must understand from where are these relationships emerging, what is the background of their relation. So in 1949, India and Philippines recognized each other. So the diplomatic ties started in 1949. But because of various reasons such as Cold War dynamics, and because of the fact that Philippines was largely aligned with the US camp and India was largely non-aligned, or in some way it was sort of aligned with, or a de facto alliance with USSR, we can say that India and Philippines did not share very robust partnership. But this changed dramatically in 1992 when Look East policy was announced. So Look East policy essentially was trying to take into consideration the growing, increasing importance of the ASEAN region. And we know that Philippines is one of the major founding part or player or organization or country of the ASEAN region, and therefore India tried to increase its expand its presence in Philippines. And then in 2014, we know that Look East policy was transformed to Act East policy. Now this was a major indicator or a major step for the strengthening of ties of India and Philippines. Not just India and Philippines, but also India and ASEAN in general, right? So this is what the development has happened, and this is the larger trajectory. So in this article, we'll also discuss how the bilateral relation, in which areas do they cooperate, and what is the major significance of this deal. So firstly, we'll discuss that there is this is the location of Philippines, and these are all the 10 members of ASEAN. So Philippines, as you can see, is towards the western side. So it starts with Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia. This is Malaysia, and towards this side we have Singapore, right? Singapore. This is Brunei, Kingdom of Brunei, and then this is Malaysia, and all this is part of Indonesia. And here it is Philippines, and the capital of Philippines is Manila. Okay, and this region is called the South China Sea, which is one of the most contested part of the Indo-Pacific regions, right? And there was some conflict with Manila and China as well. We'll discuss and we'll go into that as well. So here we have already discussed the recent agreements and the way in which India and Philippines started improving their ties. Then in what domains do we cooperate? So the first and most important domain in which India and Philippines cooperate is defense partnership. Now, defense partnership is at the heart of any strategic relationship, right? Because you will only have defense partnership with those countries with which you can trust and with which you have some shared global vision, right? So defense partnership is with those countries with which we have shared vision and some shared interest. And as a result of this, Philippines has become the first foreign buyer of BrahMos missile. We know how important BrahMos missile was during Operation Sindoor. So BrahMos missile is essentially a cruise missile, hypersonic cruise missile, and it is basically a joint venture of India and Russia, right? It's a model of co-production and co-distribution where India produces this in collaboration with Russia, and it also exports to other countries. As of now, Philippines is one country which exports this, and other countries of ASEAN, such as Vietnam, such as Indonesia, are also interested in buying BrahMos. And especially after the success of Operation Sindoor, other countries from West Asia and other countries from the Latin America are also interested in BrahMos. The first thing, so this is one of the most important aspect of defense relationship. The second part is this, that the first Track 1 maritime dialogue was held in Manila. So Track 1 essentially means government to government dialogues. So here it means that the maritime dialogue, there is some shared common objectives as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned. And that is why there is emphasis on dialogues. So in terms of shared interest, we can understand that there is an emphasis on free plus open Indo-Pacific region plus open sea lines of communication. And for India, it is also important that there is ASEAN centrality. So this is a huge convergence that these countries enjoys, and therefore this is a very robust pillar of India-Philippines relation. The second important ties is in terms of economy. If you look at the economic relations, it is close to 3.5 billion trade. And the trade is again very much favorable in terms of India. So if you look at the distribution of the export and import, most of the export of India's is basically APIs or active pharmaceutical ingredients plus generic pharma products. Apart from that, we also export agricultural goods. We also export some processed products, especially the automobile goods such as scooties and two-wheelers. And in terms of import, largely we are importing seafoods plus some electronics goods. The good thing is that it is in India's favor. So balance of the trade is in India's favor. But if you look at ASEAN, with ASEAN, India has a negative balance of trade. But with regard to Philippines, it is positive. So there's a different trade. And again, there is a talk of preferential trade agreement, which again is going to boost India-Philippines trade relation. And of course, India has leveraged the ASEAN-India FTA. So currently there's a free trade agreement with India and ASEAN, and as a result of which India and Philippines have expanded their trade relations. Thirdly, there is emphasis on capacity building. So for this is essentially on the thought process of South-South cooperation. What it means is that India wants to develop the countries of Global South as per their demand and without any conditionality. Now, this is very much a beneficial thing because India has used its tools such as ITCG, which is Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation, to benefit Philippines in multiple ways in terms of education, in terms of health and other initiatives. Also, India has started with quick impact projects, which is going to help Philippines in multiple ways, including developmental projects, social auditing, etc. Then we have people-to-people ties. So again, these ties essentially are related to government or business to business. But a tie or a partnership cannot be built unless their people are also involved in the relationship. And for that, we need people as the stakeholder or at the very basic of it or the base of it. So here we have people-to-people ties, as a result of which there is emphasis on cultural exchange renewal, and more than 70,000 Indian diaspora currently resides in Philippines, right? So this, again, these are the broad dimensions of this. Now let us talk about what exactly is going to be the significance of elevating the relationship to strategic partnership. So first, as we discussed earlier, that we have shared vision of Indo-Pacific. What exactly it means is that Indo-Pacific is going to be emerging as the new theater of contestation plus prosperity. So again, it will have certain area of prosperity, plus it will also have challenges. So here, how should this region be dealt with? What should be the policies? What should be the approach that the countries should adopt? And this is basically India and Philippines have very much similarity in this vision. So what exactly is the vision? That it should be free. So it should not be restricted by any trade barriers, or it should not be restricted by any geopolitical rivalry. It should be open, so there should not be any closeness in terms of, again, any barriers. It should be rules-based. For example, so it should be rules-based. For example, UN clause should be adhered to. It should not be arbitrary in nature. And Philippines is key to India's Mahasagar strategy. So earlier, India had adopted Sagar strategy, which is security and growth for all in the region in 2015. But in 2025, India expanded it to Mahasagar. Now, Sagar and Mahasagar can be understood in the same way as the expansion of Look East policy to Act East policy. In that sense, that Sagar strategy was largely confined to the Indian Ocean region, but the Mahasagar is expanded not just to Indian Ocean, but also to the Indo-Pacific region, right? So again, this has larger reach in terms of region, plus larger reach in terms of sectoral cooperation as well. So here it is in line with, so Mahasagar vision is basically something that is also very, Philippines is very key for India to realize this. Now the second part is, the second significance is countering China's assertiveness. So China has been very much assertive in expanding its influence in the Indo-Pacific, especially the South China Sea. And we have seen how close or how Philippines lie at the edges of South China Sea. And essentially in 2013, there was a dispute with regard to Scarborough Shoals, where Philippines took China to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, and in 2015, the Permanent Court of Arbitration declared that Philippines' position is right, and the shoal should belong to Philippines and not to China. But China did not accept that ruling, and it said that because of historical reasons, China is the right claimant of that particular island. So because of that post-16 ruling, it has become much more muscular in its approach. Therefore, Philippines want someone to hedge against China. So in that sense, India can be a very crucial player, and India is seen as a credible balancing power. Thirdly, it is very essential because of reshaping the multilateral institutions. Multilateral institutions essentially require a lot of reforms in terms of enhancing the membership, in terms of enhancing the governance, right? All these areas, including the UN Security Council, climate bodies, tech, inequality, etc. They require a lot of reforms, and in this regard, India and Philippines see eye to eye. In fact, Philippines was the one country that also condemned the recently conducted the Pahalgam terror attack, and it was very well appreciated by India as well. So it means that India and Philippines also have similar values in terms of combating terrorism. So apart from this, we have the vision, or the conclusion can be mentioned as part of what Prime Minister Modi has talked about this. So Prime Minister Modi has mentioned that India and Philippines are friends by choice and partners by destiny. From the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, they are united by shared values. So they are united by shared values, okay? So this can be used effectively as part of your introduction or as part of conclusion whenever a question comes as part of India or Philippines. So this is all about the first news. Let us take a look at some of the questions that came from this. And remember, questions will always not be direct in nature. There will be some indirect questions which can also be solved or can also be framed from the content that we have covered in the class. So the first question, which is with regard to which of the above are among the free partners of ASEAN? So there are 6 countries mentioned. We all know that India is definitely part of ASEAN. Free trade, India is a free trade partner of ASEAN. But apart from India, which all countries are also part of ASEAN? Now you tell me in the comment section. Fine. In terms of mains, UPSC again did not ask a direct question on India-Philippines relation. In fact, it has asked about comparison between Look East versus Act East. And it has also asked about the South China dispute, especially which was going on in 2013. And in respect to that, South China Sea maritime territorial disputes and rising tensions affirm the need for safeguarding maritime security to ensure freedom of navigation and overflight throughout the region. In this context, discuss the bilateral issues between India and China. So basically, this is talking about the India and China bilateral issues, but the context is about maritime safety and security, for which we can use very much inputs from the recently concluded strategic partnership agreement by India and Philippines. So let's move to the second news of the day, which is again an international relation news, that is Russia exits the INF Treaty. So here we'll talk about the importance of the treaty and the background in which it was signed. And we'll also discuss what could be its implications on the world at large and its impact on India's security and India's interest at large. If you look at the topics from where this or the content is mapped to the syllabus, it is basically effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. So that is the first way in which this content is related to our syllabus. The second way in which it is related to the syllabus is because of the presence of international organization as part of our syllabus. So again, INF is an international organization. So we need to know what exactly is the structure and what exactly is the mandate, because we are supposed to study about structure and mandate of these things. So here, what exactly is the news? So Russia has exited from the INF Treaty, which is Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty of 1987. And what was the trigger? So Russia has cited reasons such as US military actions for escalating tensions in two forms. Firstly, repositioning of two US nuclear submarines near Russian waters, and deployment of Typhoon missile system in the Philippines, right? So there are two major reasons, or two, the major reason is because it blames that US itself is violating it. So even though US had withdrawn from the treaty in 2019, it still was de facto following the treaty's spirit, but now Russia has claimed that US is not at all abiding by the principles of the treaty. So as a result of this, it will also officially go out of the treaty. So that is the news. Now let's take a look into the issues. And before that, we need to understand what exactly is the treaty all about. So INF Treaty was signed by United States and the erstwhile Soviet Union or USSR. What was the mandate or the objective? Objective was to eliminate, not reduce, eliminate all the ground-launched ballistic and cruise missiles, right? So basically, it was to all nuclear-related arms and weapons system, not just the nuclear weapons, but the nuclear launch systems as well. So ballistic missiles are generally used for launching nuclear warheads, right? And then cruise missiles are targeted in nature. So both of them were supposed to be eliminated in this range, that is 500 to 5,500 kilometers. And the importance of this was that it was the first treaty to reduce nuclear arsenals, right? So earlier treaty, if you look at it, such as the NPT treaty, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, that was essentially meant to spread or stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. But this was the first treaty in 1987 that sought to reduce nuclear arsenals of the countries which already had nuclear weapons. So it was very much important in this regard. Secondly, it wanted to eliminate. So first you reduce it, and then you eliminate an entire class of weapons, not just the weapons, but also the weapon delivery systems. Thirdly, the important thing is that it would not just be blame, or it will not just be on the basis of your claims, it will be on the basis of the verifiable thing. So again, it enabled on-site verification inspections, right? So this treaty was undermined after the US withdrawal in 2019. Again, US and NATO had claimed that Russia itself was violating the treaty, even though on paper it accepted that treaty is there, but in practice it did not abide by the provisions of the treaty. Now, what could be the implications on nuclear arms control? This is the topic which we must go through in detail, because this is what will be asked in the examination, okay? From mains perspective, of course. So first thing is, it will lead to breakdown of arms control framework or nuclear arms control. So here we have couple of important framework. First is we have NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty essentially had two things. First was it wanted to curb or prevent spread of nuclear weapons. That was its first objective. And the second objective was to promote peaceful use of nuclear energy, right? So we generally think that Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty only had one mandate, that was to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons, but it also had the mandate of promoting peaceful use of nuclear energy. So again, this was a very important agreement, but the point was that it created a sort of hierarchy, that it created a cutoff date, and it said that there will be two sort of countries, nuclear haves and nuclear have-nots. So those countries which already had got nuclear powers or nuclear weapons by 1967 were considered to be nuclear weapon states. So they were allowed to keep their nuclear weapons. And those, they were non-nuclear weapon states which were not allowed to develop their nuclear weapons, and in lieu of that, they will be receiving nuclear energy for peaceful purpose. Now, this was something that India did not accept, therefore India did not join this. Okay? So first nuclear framework will be NPT, then we have CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. Again, this sought to eliminate testing of nuclear weapons in any physical environment such as water, undersea, or maybe air, things like the underground. So India again did not sign this because it was essentially did not take into account the computer simulation that could basically do the purpose of testing. So again, India did not sign because of its discriminatory nature. The third thing, the nuclear framework, is TNPW, Treaty on Nuclear Prohibition of weapons, right? So here, this was basically a treaty to prohibit all the nuclear weapons. And this was essentially moved by the non-nuclear weapon states. And even though this was considered to be a very idealistic approach, it still did not come into place because the major signatories of them were the nuclear non-weapon states and not those which had nuclear weapon states. So again, these are the framework. Apart from that, we also have START Treaty and New START. So START essentially means Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, and this is the newer version of this or expanded version of this. So again, this was a treaty that was inspired from INF, and INF was essentially to reduce and eliminate all the nuclear warheads in a specific range. And this was for all the ranges, like it was to deliberately reduce the arms reach, right? So again, there were multiple frameworks that have happened because of this, but now that the US and Russia is going out of the treaty, it is going to undermine all these nuclear framework. Definitely, it will also have negative impact on nuclear disarmament, because nuclear disarmament will not happen unless any single country keeps or retains its nuclear weapons. So this is not going to happen because there is this large amount of mistrust that have happened, and therefore nuclear disarmament will also be a very difficult thing to achieve. Now, because of the growing distrust, this will lead to new Cold War politics. Cold War politics was characterized by the ideological position or ideological problems or ideological differences. But now, even though the ideological differences have largely subsided, but in the new Cold War, it will be largely strategic and it will be based on power politics. So this can lead to new Cold War politics, and it will also lead to increasing security risk. Why? Because it will lead to strengthening of the arms lobby, armed lobbies or military industrial complex, MIC. And we know how the military industrial complex have been very crucial in promoting security related threats in various countries, including in various countries like Africa, where they have promoted arms to various security or paramilitary forces. So again, these could be some of the major implications, and these implications equally apply to India as well. So we can write this as part of India's, the impact of this withdrawal of treaty on India's interest. Now, when it comes to the second thing, we have discussed the nuclear arms control treaty, such as Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapon, NPT. Then there is another treaty called Strategic Offensive Reduction Treaty, SORT. So this was essentially between US and Russia, 2002. And then we had START and New START, which is 2010 bilateral relation between US and Russia. Then we have TPNW, Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which was adopted at UN in 2017 and prohibits participating in any nuclear weapon activities. So these are the nuclear arms control agreements. On top of that, we can also write CTBT and etc. other thing as well. Now, the kind of question that UPSC will ask may not necessarily be from INF, but it can be with regard to NPT or IAEA or with any nuclear arms or export control regime. So here they had asked a question, which among the above are nuclear weapon states as recognized by the treaty on the NPT, commonly known as NPT, right? So the right answer here is only 1 and 2, China and France. So you should know that only the P5 countries are recognized as nuclear weapon states as per NPT. In terms of PYQs, we can get a hint of what kind of questions can come from this theme. And the theme here is re-emergence of Cold War dynamics, right? So here UPSC has already asked a question on how the USA is facing an existential threat in the form of China that is very much different or much more challenging than the erstwhile Soviet Union, right? So earlier it was facing an existential challenge in the form of ideological challenge, whether communism is better or capitalism is better. Now China is providing or beating US in its own game, right? Now the challenge is in terms of state-led capitalism, right? And again in terms of implementation. Secondly, in what ways would the ongoing US-Iran nuclear pact controversy affect the national interest of India? So this was basically because of the exit of Iran from JCPOA in 2018 or 17, and therefore this question came in the exam. So again, because Russia has withdrawn from INF, a similar kind of question can come where you can be asked about its implication on India's interest. Fine. Let's move to the next topic, that is Dharali, which is in Uttarakhand, hit by cloudburst triggered flash floods. So you can take a visual of this. And in terms of the syllabus, it is part of GS1, where you have important geophysical phenomena such as earthquake, tsunami, cyclones, etc. And cloudburst can also be categorized as one important geophysical phenomena. Plus, also, of course, it is part of GS paper 3 within disaster and disaster management. So here we need to understand what has happened, why it is happening, and what can be done to prevent it from further happening. So this is the 3 framework that we need to adopt. So what exactly happened is a cloudburst over this river, Khir Ganga river. It is called Khir Ganga, and it's a tributary of Alaknanda river, led to flash floods in Uttarkashi district. Right? So this is the news, and we know that this is not a singular event. It is part of a larger trend, and the trend is that these events are getting more frequent in Uttarakhand, not just in Uttarakhand, but also in Himachal Pradesh. And recently, we also saw flash floods in Sikkim. We also had floods earlier, couple of years ago, in Jammu and Kashmir. So again, this kind of floods are frequently happening. So we must understand the basic reason why this is happening and what can be done to prevent and overcome this. So the first thing we need to understand is what exactly is cloudburst, why does it happen, and what exactly are the ways to control it. So first thing is, cloudburst is just like a rainfall, but the rainfall is characterized by a heavy rainfall in a very short span of time. A heavy rainfall in a very short span of time. So what is the extent of rainfall? It should be more than 10 centimeter rainfall in 1 hour. So time, this is the amount of precipitation, this is the duration. So it's in a very short duration and at a smaller location, right? Small location. That it is basically, and this is described by, this is given by IMD, Meteorological Department of India. And then the problematic things with cloudburst is that it is very difficult to predict because it is of very short duration and it is of localized scale. And if you have seen the video that was circulating in the social media about the flash flood, within a matter of seconds, the entire region was washed away because of that mudsling or by the flash flood. Third, we need monitoring needs. What kind of monitoring is required? We need dense radars, networks, or high resolution models. Now we have already seen that recently NISAR was launched as a collaboration between India and US. So such resolution, such initiative may definitely help us in understanding and providing quick resolution or quick updates with regard to development of cloudburst as well. So we'll look into this, that to what extent such technologies can be helpful. It is more frequent in hilly terrains than the plains. So we'll discuss why this happens more in hilly terrains than plains. And in terms of its protection or prevention, NDMP has included a cloudburst disaster risk reduction strategies. So again, we'll discuss what is the disaster risk reduction strategies as provided by National Disaster Management Plan. So these are the three major or three important aspects that we must understand. So here, to logically understand them, right? So there are several initiatives or several measures that the NDMP had provided with respect to cloudburst. But here, if we understand it in a logical way, that first it is important for us to understand how it happens. So we need to understand the first, what exactly is cloudburst and how exactly it forms. So there are certain geographical reasons and there are certain anthropogenic reasons for the formation of cloudburst. So we'll understand this and we'll make sure that we limit or we take care of at least the human induced factors. The second part is, and understanding this also includes that we understand the risk, we compile and maintain data on cloudburst events. So we understand in which areas cloudburst have happened, what is the pattern that happens, and we understand which areas are prone to landslide hazard zonation. Then we must invest in DRR. So first we need to understand the risk, understand what exactly it is happening. Second is we need to invest. Investment here means that we need to plan in advance, right? Because in disaster, when the disaster is ongoing, it is very difficult for anyone to take action because of the nature and speed or of the rapidity of the disaster. So it is very crucial that we invest in disaster risk reduction even before the disaster has taken place. And what can be some of the investment? First is we need to ensure that the natural drainage system is repaired and it is maintained so that the water or the sludge is able to pass by without any obstruction. Then, yes, we also need to invest in various sewage management system and other aspects. So basically, this is going to be understand, invest, and the third step is capacity building. Right? So these two are before disaster happen, right? So this is pre-disaster. So before even disaster happens, these are the measures that you are supposed to take. And then once disaster takes place, because there are certain reasons, natural causes, which we cannot prevent even if we try to. So we must take certain capacity building initiative as well as part of post-disaster initiative. So when disaster happens or during disaster, what should be some of the measures that should be taken? So first is that the local bodies should be prepared and understand what is to be done, right? And they should promote use of insurance, risk transfer, and it should also, there should be some standard operating principles in terms of how the rehabilitation of people should take place. So again, it is about understanding and planning in a better way, and then in terms of capacity building. So it's very essential for us to understand how cloudbursts take place. So there are two reasons why the Himalayan states are quite vulnerable, and it is basically because of geographical factors and because of the anthropogenic factors or human-made factors. So in terms of geographical factors, this is because of orographic lift on steep slopes. So for example, this is a steep slope. So this leads to formation of clouds, right? And once the clouds has enough moisture in it, it releases the water suddenly. This leads to flash floods, okay? And this is something that cannot be avoided because of the terrain of the Himalayan states or of the region in news. Then there are anthropogenic or man-made factors. First reason is because we have seen a growing trend of increasing rainfall, not just in the Himalayan region, but also in the plain region. You may have seen about the urban flooding events in cities like Gurugram and also in Bengaluru, or in maybe even in Delhi, right? Or recently in UP. So Kedarnath study has revealed that more than 50% of rainfall is linked to greenhouse gases and aerosol. And we know that these are some of the factors that is essentially caused by man-made reasons. Fine, so these are some of the reasons which we need to understand because of the vulnerability of Himalayan states. Now, in terms of PYQs, we can see that there are 3 questions which have come directly from Cloudburst, right? So the first question that they asked recently in this year itself is about what is the phenomena of cloudburst explained, as simple as that. So you must understand what exactly it is. Second, they have asked about the mechanism and occurrence of cloudburst in the context of Indian subcontinent, discussed 2 recent examples. So first question came as part of GS1. So you need to understand the geophysical phenomena behind formation of cloudburst. Secondly, you must also understand the mechanism and occurrence and examples. And third, with reference to National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, guidelines, discuss the measures to be adopted to mitigate the impact of the recent incidents of cloudburst in many places of Uttarakhand. So again, here we can talk about 3-step strategies in terms of understanding, in terms of capacity building, or in terms of investing in DRR, right? So these strategies can be mentioned as part of reduction or in terms of providing the mitigating aspects. So let's move to the next topic, which is International Seabed Authority, ISA, concluded 30th session of ISA Assembly. Now this news essentially is again from important international institutions. So here we need to understand the structure, who are the members, and the mandate. So what exactly happened in these session, in the 30th session? First was that there was a common heritage fund was formed, and it was essentially to progress on creating a financial tool for sustainability, capacity building, and fair benefit sharing. We'll discuss what exactly it is. Then Economic Planning Commission was also sought to be formed to assess economic impacts of seabed mining and suggest mitigation. Third, International Deep Sea Seabed Day, November 1, to be designated to raise global awareness. So first, let's talk about what exactly is International Seabed Authority. So International Seabed Authority is the authority that regulates mineral resources in seabed beyond national jurisdiction. Right? So what is national jurisdiction? So here we need to understand what exactly, how we measure the various boundary of national jurisdiction in terms of sea, right? So here, for example, if this is the region, right? Or this is the place where the boundary ends, and here the sea boundaries start, right? So till 12 nautical mile, it is considered as territorial water. And till 24 nautical miles, it is considered to be a contiguous zone. This is for customs purpose, and this is the area where the country has complete sovereignty. And then till 200 nautical mile is considered to be what is called EEZ, which is exclusive economic zone, which means that within this region, the country can do any kind of exploration, research, or anything, right, which is basically related to economic activities. Now the mandate of ISA start from this, beyond this region. So this is called the area, okay? And this is where the mandate of ISA starts. So ISA mandate starts after the EEZ, or there is also continental shelf area which has to be excluded. So beyond continental shelf area, sometimes it can also extend to 300 nautical nautical miles if there is presence of continental shelf, right? So the point is that ISA's mandate starts from the beyond the national jurisdiction. And why it is very unique? Because it is the only global body. So it is an intergovernmental body. So it is created as part of UN clause. So you all know about UN clause, right? So United Nations Convention on Law of Sea, right? So UN clause. And it was formed, I think, in 1982. And within this, there are three organizations. You have ITLOS, you have CCLS, and then you have ISA, which is International Seabed Authority, which we are supposed to study here. And then ITLOS is for tribunals. CCLS is something which regulates continental shelf, and ISA is for exploration of deep seabed mining. And essentially, it is beyond the natural jurisdiction. What is the goal here? To ensure responsible and regulated deep sea economic activities. Why? Because we need to be sustainable in our nature. We need to control, or we need to be responsible. For example, we have SDG 14, life below water should not be disturbed because of the economic activities that we are conducting. So all these activities are supposed to be regulated by ISA, right? And in terms of the headquarters, it is very interestingly located in Kingston, Jamaica. And the members are 170, including 169 countries plus European Union. And all the UN clause members are party or are members of ISA, right? Now let's talk about some, like this is the basic thing that we are discussing earlier, that this area is part of your territorial sea till 12 nautical miles. Then till 24 nautical miles, it is your contiguous zone. And then till your 200 nautical miles, it is your continental shelf. So this is not M, this is NM nautical miles. And then this area, this is called the area. The area is essentially where the jurisdiction of ISA will lie. Now recently, ISA has taken certain initiative, right? So we'll take a look about all these initiatives and what exactly they do. So the first initiative that it has taken is in terms of Deep Sea Biobank Initiative. Deep Sea Biobank Initiative, what exactly it does, it provides global access to deep sea biological samples and genetic data from the international seabed beyond national jurisdiction. So this is understood that it is going to be beyond national jurisdiction only, but it will provide access to biological samples for research, right? And generic data. Also, the other advantage is that if the ISA is providing samples, then the other countries will not be prompted to do that research themselves, thereby saving them crucial energy and resources. And it will also establish a global repository of deep sea biological samples accessible for research and capacity development activities. Secondly, there is another initiative called Area 2030. It is for facilitating high resolution mapping. So it is, the first one is about samples and the global repository. The second one is about mapping of international seabed area, and this is to be done by 2030. Third is about Sustainable Seabed Knowledge Initiative, that is SSKI. It is to strengthen the scientific foundation for effective protection and management of deep sea, right? So there is, third initiative is to strengthen the scientific foundation for effective protection and management of deep sea. Fine. So in terms of questions from this, UPSC has asked a question on UN clause, right? So if ISA is in news, it is expected that you will also go and read about the treaty under which it has been formed. And so you should know about UN clause. So take a look at this question and try to attempt it. The next news is about WHO classifies hepatitis D as carcinogenic. Now again, this is basically part of your science and technology or basic sciences, understanding the disease and its causes, prevention, right? And it is also part of biotechnology, and in GS2 you have social justice, where issues related to health is mentioned as part of your syllabus. So what is the news all about? It's about hepatitis virus. And hepatitis D, first of all, certain facts about hepatitis D. So hepatitis D is a defective virus. What is a defective virus? A defective virus is one which requires a different or a supplement virus to function. So on its own, it will not be able to function. Like other virus, hepatitis B can be able to function on its own. So hepatitis D will require some other virus again to replicate. Secondly, it affects only those already infested with HBV or hepatitis B, right? So which means that those who are infected with hepatitis D will already have hepatitis B. Fine. Then what is exactly the viral hepatitis overview? Types A to E causes acute liver infection. First of all, hepatitis is liver inflammation. This disease causes liver inflammation. And why liver is important? Liver is important because it detoxifies blood, and it also is very crucial for bile secretion and other aspects. So liver is a very important component of our body, and hepatitis is an infection of the liver, and it renders it ineffective in its functioning. Now, there are certain categories of hepatitis A, B, C, D, E, E, and it is basically on the nature of the virus, right? How does your liver gets infected? On that basis, there is different categories of virus. So take a look at all these categories. In terms of the categories, we have these types and transmission routes. So hepatitis A, for example, is essentially spread through water or food, okay? Or hepatitis B, it spreads from three means: from mother to child, from sexual intercourse, and from blood or fluids. Hepatitis C, on the other hand, essentially spreads from blood or fluids. And hepatitis D, which we are studying now, it spreads on basically from blood and fluids. Apart from that, it also requires hepatitis B virus infection. So these are the conditions in which it forms. And then you have hepatitis E, which is spread from water or food. Now we'll take a look into some of the global burden and initiative. Why do we need to care about this disease? So first of all, it affects more than 300 million plus people and causes 1.3 million deaths annually. And the problematic thing is that it remains undiagnosed, and therefore it becomes very problematic. Some of the key initiatives undertaken by India is National Viral Hepatitis Control Program. And within this, the target is to eliminate hepatitis C by 2030 and align with SDG 3.3. Again, if we eliminate hepatitis B, then we can say that we are already eliminating hepatitis D as well, right? In terms of global initiative, we have the initiative taken by WHO, which is Global Health Sector Strategy 2022 to 2030, wherein the aim is to eliminate viral hepatitis as a public health threat. Now, what are the challenges in tackling hepatitis? First is the diagnosis rate is very small. It is only 13% of hepatitis B and 36% of hepatitis C. So if you are not able to diagnose the problem, it is in fact impossible to provide a solution, right? Secondly, the vaccine coverage is very less, especially when it comes to India, because there is low awareness and people do not want to get treated because they think that they could be problematic with problems with the immunization programs, right? So there is low awareness, then there is spread of misinformation. Then there's limited treatment options in terms of few approved therapies, new drugs. They show very much promise, but still they are in the treatment stage, or they are not yet applicable. So let's talk about the next news, which is India's External Affairs Minister calls for a fair and representative global order. And this was discussed within the BIMSTEC Traditional Music Festival. So again, this is important because this is a statement which was given by our External Affairs Minister, and it is essentially a call for reforming the global governance framework. So this, of course, it is part of international institutions and the way it is supposed to reform. So the statement was, he urged for fair, inclusive, and representative global order, not dominated by a few powers. And we can understand the backdrop in which the statement is coming. It is, of course, prompted by the recent US move to impose 25% reciprocal tariff on India. In fact, the President Trump has already mentioned that he's further considering additional tariff on India because India is trading with Russia. So in that context, this becomes very important that we need that global order is essentially improved, and it is the governance model is also improvised. So what are the areas of where we can consider this to be reformed? The first thing is US hegemony or the power is declining. So the post-World War II order was predicated on the basis of hegemony of US or the power that was there in US, but now it is being challenged by China's rise and its strategic overreach because it is overstepping in various areas and it is withdrawing from global forums. We have discussed already that US had withdrawn from the INF in 2019 and also from other UN-based groups. Trade as geopolitical tools, use of tariff. For example, EU has CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Tariff, right, mechanism, and sanctions by developed countries. Developed countries like US has imposed sanctions on various countries which have indulged in trade with Russia in the form of CAATSA and also with regard to Iran to exert the power. So basically, this is an extension of their power. Unequal global representation, global south underrepresented in UNSC. If you look at the composition of the P5 members in the UN Security Council, only China is there from, we can consider it to be part of global south. And there is very limited representation from global south in UNSC or in World Bank or any major financial groupings. Then we know that the multilateralism has been effectively sidelined by power politics, right? So there are multiple areas which require intervention by the multilateral institutions, including climate change, including trade negotiations, including stopping the war that is ongoing in Palestine or maybe in in Ukraine. So in that sense, the role played by the multilateral groupings such as UNSC or WTO has been bypassed by the powerful states and their intrinsic national interest or their narrow national interest. So again, this has led to fragmented global responses, and again, it may lead to some sort of factionalism. Then there is rise of regionalism, which is power diffusion through blocks like BRICS, Quad, and ASEAN. So again, the entire philosophy behind this is that the global order is undergoing a lot of pulls and pressures, and therefore there's a need to revive the multilateral order so that it ensures that the global threats are not undermined and they are resolved in a proper manner. So what are the way forward? So way forward, the solution in this is that we need to reform the multilateral institutions in terms of the expansion of UNSC, United Nations Security Council. We need to restructure the Bretton Woods institutions such as World Bank, WTO, and greater participation should be there of Global South. And they should also be getting voting right, not just the participation right. So they should have a proper say in the decision making. The multilateral should be inclusive in nature, which means that groupings like G20, BRICS, IBSA should be strengthened and allowed consensus-based decision making and not something where it should be based on majority decision making, right? Enhance issue-based cooperation addressing global issues such as peace, climate change, human rights, etc. through consensus. Again, these could be initiative through improve the multilateral institutions. Now we'll move on to the places in news, and here we have New Zealand, which is in news. Why in news? Because India and New Zealand recently had defense strategic dialogue, which was held in New Delhi. Now, if you look at the map of New Zealand, you can see that it is there in Pacific Ocean. It is in fact an island nation because it is surrounded entirely by ocean, and it is in southwest Pacific Ocean. And then we can see that it is, we also have Fiji and Caledonia, New Caledonia, which is basically a territory of France, and then Australia, and the capital of New Zealand is Wellington. And then there are two islands, North Island and the South Island, and it is separated by what is called as Cook Strait, right? Then what are the geographical features? It is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire and Zealandia microcontinent, right? So this is a separate continent, right? It is called Zealandia. Then in terms of relief, in the southern region, you have Southern Alps, and it has Canterbury Plains. It also has volcanoes in the form of White Island. Highest peak is Mount Cook, and there are multiple rivers like Waikato and all these rivers. Next, we'll discuss the quick updates. Within this, the first news is with regard to President's rule. So we know that recently the President rule was imposed in Manipur, and I think yesterday or today itself, Parliament has extended the President rule in Manipur by 6 months. So what is important here is not where it is imposed, but it is important that we understand the underlying principles behind President rule. So we should know when it is imposed. So it is governed by Article 356. It is imposed when the state government fails to function as per the Constitution, which means that there is no presence, like no political parties are able to form a government after an election, or there is a problem with regard to some sort of constitutional crisis is there, right? So this is basically part of the emergency provisions, and we know that there are 3 types of emergencies. First is your national emergency under Article 352, then you have President's rule under 356, and financial emergency under Article 360. So what you need to do is to understand all these provisions through comparison, right? So you should understand how national emergency is different from President's rule, and you should know what is the effect of President's rule vis-a-vis the national emergency. So here, the effect is localized in nature, which means that the state executive is dismissed and the power is centralized, which means that it is done through the president via the governor, even though the state legislature may or may not be dismissed. The duration is generally for 6 months, and after every 6 months, the approval from Parliament is to be taken, and the maximum duration can be 3 years, and after 1 year it can only continue if there is a national emergency is in place, and or the election commission has written or has provided this assurance that election cannot be conducted in that particular state. So the duration is 6 months, and after every 6 months the approval from Parliament is to be taken, and it cannot be continued for more than 3 years. After 1 year, it can only continue if national emergency is imposed on the entire nation or the election commission recommends otherwise. There are certain checks in terms of the presidential rule in the fact that it is also subject to judicial review, and there are certain guidelines provided by Supreme Court in the SR Bomai case. Next, let's move on to the next topic, which is the reservation of seats for scheduled tribes. Now, Lok Sabha has recently passed a bill to provide scheduled tribe reservation in the Goa Legislative Assembly. Interestingly, in Goa, the population there was SC and ST's population, and there was reservation for the SC population. But recently, the scheduled tribe population has grown in nature, and therefore there is a huge demand by the ST community for reservation provision as per the Constitution. And if you look at the Constitution, there's a provision for reservation of SC and ST as per Article 332. And if you look at the clauses of Article 32, it mentions that in all parts of the India, there shall be reservation for SC, ST as per their population. So there shall be proportional representation. At the same time, there's an exemption as far as Assam is concerned, wherein it is said that it will be provided at the various autonomous district level, not at the state level. Fine. Next, let's go to the next part, which is environmental impact assessment and what exactly has recently been done. So One Shakti versus Union of India case. So here, there were 2 contentious things. First thing was, can center make any large buildings or buildings for developmental perspectives, such as schools, colleges, hostels, and can they be exempted from EIA? Second, who is supposed to undertake EIA within these categories when the projects is of less than 20,000 square meter, right? So in this case, the Supreme Court has stuck a very balanced approach, whereby the Supreme Court has mentioned that development and environmental sustainability need to coexist. And what it has mentioned is that the center is not going to be exempted from EIA as far as large buildings, even for schools or hotels or hostels, right? And all the projects which are above 20,000 square meter shall undergo clearance under EIA notification. So within the EIA notification, we know that prior environmental clearance is mandatory, but there are two conditions here. Category A is cleared by central government, which is for larger projects, and category B, for the smaller project, it is done by the state environmental impact assessment authorities. Next news about krill. So what is krill? And krill is basically undergoing pressure because of fishing. So essentially it is a small pelagic crustacean, right? So it's a marine organisms. It is undergoing pressure due to fishing, due to climate change, and growing demand for its omega-3 oil, right? So what exactly it is? It is a small pelagic crustacean found mainly in the Antarctic Ocean, North Atlantic and North Pacific. What is its ecological role? It is keystone species in the Antarctic ecosystem, feeding on plankton and serving as the primary food source. So again, it is very important as far as the food chain is concerned, and it is primary food source for whales, seals, squids, and seabirds. So if for some reason krill disappears from the ecosystem or substantially reduce, it will also impact whales, seals, squids, and seabird. That is why it is called keystone species. What is the behavior? Because we also need to understand some of the animal behavior or the marine organisms behavior, because we frequently see such kind of questions come in the examination. So they travel in large swarms, and a study has found that krill removes 20 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere each year. So it has a very significant role to play as far as carbon capturing is concerned. Next important news is regarding Nilgiri tar. A joint census in Kerala and Tamil Nadu was recently conducted, and it found that the population of Nilgiri tar has been 2668, right? And what exactly are Nilgiri tar? Is the only mountain ungulate in the southern India. So ungulate are basically mammals which have hoofed, right? And amongst the 12 species present in India, it is the state animal of Tamil Nadu. Sometimes UPSC also asked about state animal or about something related to state plants. So this again, this trivia is important. It's endemic, or it is found primarily in the Western Ghats, which includes Tamil Nadu and Kerala, among other areas. And this national park holds largest contiguous population, which is Eraviculam National Park. So this national park is important. What is the conservation status? It is endangered as per IUCN Red List, not critically endangered, but endangered. And within the protection status, it is Schedule 1, which is the highest stage of protection under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. And the conservation efforts is, we have a Nil project, Nilgiri tar, conducted by Tamil Nadu in 2023, and there is also initiative for promotion of Nilgiri tar by giving a separate day for Nilgiri tar, that is on 7th October. The threats that they face is because of habitat loss due to plantations, because of infrastructure development, and because of land use change. Because once you clear out the habitat, then as we discussed here, that there would be certain keystone species which would be missed out. And one of the reasons why they thrive in this area is because of the plantation species, plants that, or the herbs that they consume there, which is very much nutritious for them. So when it is cut off, or when it is removed for the purpose of plantation, it does not also help them survive as well. Next topic is about sea buckthorn. And why it is in news is because understand from the perspective of the space traveler or the astronauts. So the astronauts, when they are traveling in the space or when they are staying in the International Space Station, they're not given too much option of eating foods, right? So again, this is an experiment that is being conducted to check whether sea buckthorn can be used as one of the food choices for the astronauts in various places in space. So what is sea buckthorn? It is a deciduous shrub or tree, pioneer species for soil improvement, wind and sand control, and soil and water conservation. So it is well adapted to live in cold areas of high altitude. In general, we see that it is coniferous areas or trees which are basically adapted to live in cold areas, but here it is a deciduous plant, and it has a high nutritional value, wherein it is very rich in vitamins, in carotenoids, in polyphenols, fatty acids, and phytosteroids. Then, apart from the nutritional value, it also has various health benefit. It has high medicinal and therapeutic potential due to its antioxidant, anti-cancer, and anti-inflammatory properties. Next, we'll talk about UN World Food Program. And here we need to understand the context that there's a lot of food shortages going on in various parts of the world, including Gaza, including in Yemen, in South Sudan. But if you look at the epidemic in the South Asian region, it is not exactly because of access of food, but it is because of access of or poor nutrition. And one of the reasons why there is a issue of nutrition in the South Asian region, it's because of our food habits. And one of the problems with our food habits is that it is very much associated with carbohydrates, which is found in rice and wheat. So what the government has done is that it is now going for rice fortification in collaboration with World Food Program, and it is providing it to Nepal along with a supply chain management. So this is all about the news, and we need to understand what exactly is World Food Program. It is the world's largest humanitarian organization providing free or food aid to save lives and help people recover from conflict, disasters, and climate conflicts. The headquarters are in Rome, Italy, and it was established in 1961 by the joint efforts of UN General Assembly and Food and Agricultural Organization. The funding is from voluntary contributions from governments, corporates, and private donors, and it has also been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020. So again, this part is important from not just the international relations perspective of international organization perspective, but it is also important from the perspective of India-Nepal bilateral relations. The last news for today is acceptance of necessity AON. And again, here we need to understand the context first. So the context is in terms of defense acquisition. We need to know that because of several threats, external and internal, it is always important that a country constantly upgrade itself militarily. And for that purpose, there are two reasons or two ways in which it can do it. One is internal balancing and the other one is external balancing. Within internal balancing, what it can do is it can expand its capabilities, it can enhance its research and development. And in terms of external balancing, it can collaborate with other countries, it can receive various military aids or military projects, right? So this effort is, we know that India is surrounded by several entities which are very much detrimental to India's interest, right? And in Operation Sindoor, we had seen how effectively India has utilized the air defense system in terms of S-400 and also in terms of targeted attack, in terms of the BrahMos cruise missiles. So we need to have certain very advanced and future ready weapons, and for that purpose we need to have a defense procurement process which is transparent and which is accountable and which is efficient. And for that purpose there has been a body called DAC, which is Defense Acquisition Council, right? So Defense Acquisition Council is the body that initiates the defense procurement process, and it is headed by our Minister of Defense. It is the highest decision making body for deciding on the new policies and capital acquisition. And it has expressed or granted AON, which is the process for procurement of weapons or defense equipments worth 67,000 crores. So this is a very important development as far as the defense preparedness of India is concerned. So here we need to understand what exactly is AON, because UPSC can ask you in terms of what exactly is AON, which is recently in news, right? In terms of prelims exam, or UPSC can also ask you about the need for India to further enhance its defense preparedness. So what exactly is AON? So AON is the first step towards procurement. So first of all, we know that AON is to be decided by the DAC, which is Defense Acquisition Council. But what exactly is AON? It is one of the process or the first step towards the procurement of military equipment. Second, that it is under Defense Acquisition Procedure, right? So this is under Defense Acquisition Procedure of 2020. And what are the key technologies which have been granted by the AON recently? First is thermal imager based driver night sights for BMP to improve night mobility. So basically we need to be ready to combat or be prepared in terms of night combating, and for that purpose there is thermal imager based driver night shift sights. Then compact autonomous surface craft for detecting and neutralizing undersea threats. And third, upgrade of Saksham Spider air defense systems for better integration with the integrated air command and control system. So because of the changing dynamics in the warfare, we also need to change the weapons that we have at our disposal. So because of AON, we will be able to get to that level. So this is all about news today. Now make sure that you attempt all the questions which will be flashing on your screen, and if possible, try to reply with all your comments in terms of what have you, in terms of the solution that you can think of within this. So with that, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.